Hey everybody, happy to be back with you. And boy, I tell you, after that loss last Sunday, you get a little bit worried and start thinking, man, I don't know about this replay. I don't know how this is going to wind up for us. So one of the things I was thinking about while I was looking back at it and doing a little bit of research and trying to figure out what went right, what went wrong, is I realized that it's different to do a football replay than it is to do a replay for another sport. One of the reasons why is that most of the football games will not give you the option to use like the original starting lineups and all of the original transactions and stuff like that. And you see people worry about this sometimes on the forums. I've seen this on the Action PC football forum as I've looked around for different tips and advice to get things going. And I have a couple of sort of mixed thoughts about this, right? I mean, on the one hand, I do agree that it would be nice if we could retrace, injuries and all these movements exactly as they happen in real life. On the other hand, I do know that it's not really feasible. I mean, part of the problem is that we have a real hard time figuring out, who was like second string versus third string versus fourth string in different positions. We don't exactly have all of this information available, especially when it's sort of changed over time. We can kind of guess in terms of player usage, but even then we have to be careful, right? You'll remember I had a video a couple weeks ago about fatigue, which can be very deceiving in this game because fatigue, as I understand it, is in part dictated by the number of runs your running back has had in your replay versus in real life, or the number of passing plays your quarterback has made, and so on. There are a lot of things that can trip you up that are kind of the natural give and take of the replay that you might end up being punished for doing better in your replay than the team did in real life. So it's kind of a hard question. You really kind of want to see the game continue to use sort of injury ratings and kind of take things as they come instead of forcing things into happen. But I'll show you here sort of where my conundrum is at. So I've got us here on ProFootballReference.com. Here's the 1980 Cleveland Browns, and I was surprised when I looked at this today. If I click on that game against Pittsburgh, I'll see right away that we actually do have a list of the starters here. All the starters on offense and defense for both teams are listed right away. You could, in theory, set up every single game to match this exactly. But, of course, you have problems. What happens when you change formations, right? What happens if, we want to have 3 wide receivers this time, or we want to have a different type of formation or whatever? What if I don't want to start Greg Pruitt? Greg Pruitt like I did in game. What if I wanted to start somebody else, right? I mean, things like that you need to have the ability to change as a head coach. That might be a little bit difficult if you're going to stick strictly to the lineup. The other thing is you'll notice here when you look through this box score is that Cliff Stout started the game for the Steelers. Now, he had a really good game. He went over 300 yards. Not the best passer rating in the world, though, and gave up an interception, didn't get any touchdowns, and so on. But they kind of gives you an idea of kind of what was happening in real life in this game, and one of those things that's kind of difficult for us to go back and to recreate and to retrace, using a game simulation. And then there are other problems as well, too, right? Like exactly how were these plays called? We don't know. We might even be able to find like a play-by-play account of the game, but a play-by-play account of the game doesn't do you much good for this because I need to know actually like what was the offensive play calling like? What was the defensive scheme like? How can I recreate that exact scheme? You can even watch the game and still not entirely know how that scheme would be correctly recreated. Anyways, there's a lot of different things that kind of go into that. It's actually one of the things for me that makes these football replays really stand out, right? You may have seen before, I have a channel where I do a lot of baseball stuff, baseball replays and the like. Baseball replays are a lot of fun. But the problem that you have with a baseball replay is that usually when you're playing the game, you're kind of the observer on the outside kind of watching what's happening, and you don't have a lot of direct interaction. Whereas with these football replays, you're calling all the plays, right? You're making all the big decisions. You've got to be on top of things and have to know like exactly where things are going, exactly where things were, and so on and so forth. So, in a way, I kind of am happy that it's like this and that there's a lot of that flexibility and a lot of that room to maneuver in. Another thing I want to show you here real quick before we end it, and this is once again sort of my excuse as to why things might not be going as well as they could. You can see that with 357 points for and 310 points against, the Browns were really kind of middle of the pack that year. And the expected win-loss was about a little over 9 wins and just under 7 losses, which is probably more realistic for us right now than 11-5 since we've already lost 5 games. So just keep that in mind. If this replay ends up being, unsuccessful, it doesn't mean it's actually unsuccessful. It just means that we might have a little bit of bad luck. We've been in every game that we've lost, and we've finished within a touchdown of the other team every time we've lost, so it could be worse. Anyway, just a few of my thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think about it and what you think about trying to balance out, real-life starts and all this stuff in your own football replays. Let me know in the comments. I'll talk to you later. Take care.